This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we've got a great show ahead for you here. We have a gentleman I don't know the last time we had anybody with his background on the show. He is a commercial broker and the guy that finds those great deals for people and those that are looking. So this is going to be a really interesting show. He's also an investor himself. His name is Logan Freeman. He is, as I mentioned, a real estate investor, a developer, and agent who has found his niche in the industry, acting as an investment property specialist and actually representing buyers instead of sellers in the transaction process. He has also completed multiple joint venture projects, equity partnerships, and works as a developer. Completing over 120 transactions in less than a year, Logan has found a process and relies on his most valuable priorities to guide his profit-producing activities. In 2018, Logan founded Live Free Investments, a successful real estate investing firm that ensures strong returns on capital from secure collateralized real estate investments. Well, Logan, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Well, thanks for having me, Bill. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, man, it's great to have you on here. This is going to be a real interesting podcast. I didn't mention a lot of things in your intro, too, about your background, but hopefully as you kind of give us your story, maybe you can share a little bit of that information and, eventually get into how you got involved in real estate. So if you don't mind, just give us a little background. Where are you from, growing up? And all that?
Absolutely. So I'm from a little small town here in Missouri. And it's the capital of Missouri. And I'll just throw a quiz out there. All you guys that are listening, if you remember geography class, what was the capital of Missouri? A lot of people don't know. I'll tell you. It's Jefferson City. Jefferson City is smack dab right in the middle of the state. And it's a farming community, but also just a really, really nice place to live. If I had to describe Jefferson City, and I love Jefferson City, but if I had to describe it, it would be closer to what Carol Dweck calls the fixed mindset type of place to live, and not necessarily a lot of the growth mindset people that come out of Jefferson City, which is totally fine. But, I lived in that community for 15, 16 years, well, I guess a little bit longer, probably 18 years. And then whenever I was off to college, I haven't really spent a whole lot of time back there other than visiting family, and my eyes were opened whenever I got to larger cities like St. Louis and Kansas City, and some travel as well. And so, I grew up baling hay, working when I was 14 years old, baling hay and working at a catering business. And that really taught me the value of a dollar. And, it was really important for me to start working out, getting paid. Believe this or not, but I guess it would be 15 years ago, $5.15 an hour. So everybody out there that's upset about where minimum wage is now, I would make $200 a week working my tail off. And wow, how far we have come since then. But I grew up working hard, and I tell this story because whenever I was 15 years old, I actually had a conversation with my mom. I started a personal finance class my freshman year, and I went to my mom and said, "Mom, I have to start a Roth IRA. Dave Ramsey is the guy. I got to listen to Dave Ramsey." And so my mom took me down to a financial institution. When I was 15 years old, I had to have a cosigner. I started maxing out my Roth IRA every single year. And that really, what I'll call, interested me, not only making money, but trying to figure out how to make my money work for me. And, I went to school at a Catholic high school in Jefferson City and had a great, what I'll call, athletic career. I got a scholarship to go play football at a Division II school near Kansas City at the University of Central Missouri. And I was blessed to have a really good career there. Team captain, multiple seasons, and had the opportunity to go to the next level. And I got picked up after the draft was over, and I went out to the Oakland Raiders. And I had a tryout, and I made it there for a little while, a couple weeks, maybe a month, and really enjoyed that opportunity. But what I learned through that process was that what I loved about football was the leadership aspect, the team working together towards a common goal. And whenever I got to the NFL, it was every man for himself. I'm trying to make this team. I'm not going to help you out. And, my heart really wasn't in it. And I think that showed. And ultimately, I ended up getting cut from the Oakland Raiders. And I had a decision to make. I had a big decision to make. And it was, should I continue to play football, or should I try to start using my brain instead of my body for my career? And I decided to start using my brain. So I have a little caveat here. I was on a family trip with some friends, and we were on the rooftop patio at a pool, and I got a call from the San Francisco 49ers, and their center had went down. Well, this was about 4 or 5 weeks after I got cut from the Oakland Raiders. And Bill, I know you guys can't see me right now, but I'm about 6'3", 260 pounds now. At that time, I was 6'3", 335 pounds. And to keep that weight on, I had to eat dang near 10,000 calories a day. And a lot of that was protein. So 400, 500 grams of protein a day is not fun to eat. I will tell you that much right now. So when I stopped doing that, I stayed in shape. I was just running. I shed about 35 or 45 pounds in about 4 or 5 weeks. So when the 49ers called, they said, "Hey, Logan, are you in shape?" I said, "I'm in great shape." They said, "Well, what do you weigh?" And I said, "I'm like 285. And they're like, that's a little bit less than what you were, a month ago. And I said, "Yeah, this is, I decided to not pursue football anymore." And they said, "Well, we appreciate you being honest, but just so you know, we were ready to fly you out to camp to try to make the team here." And I said, "I appreciate that." And I turned that down, and that was the big decision point. Went back to school, finished my master's degree, and got started in the workforce. So it was a really cool opportunity, but it was also very prevalent to me that it wasn't what God had intended for me to do. So that's a little bit about me, Bill.
Wow. What position did you play?
I was an offensive lineman. So I played center. Yeah.
Oh, you need that weight. Yeah, definitely. Oh,
Most definitely. Yeah.
Well, that's great. What an awesome story. Awesome story. You got your master's. Did you get an MBA? Were you focused in business?
I did. I got an MBA. I kind of like to tell this to people as well. Whenever I was cut from the NFL and decided to go back, I didn't have any scholarship money. And when you're trying to make a football team for a month or two, you don't make a whole lot of money either. And so I had to figure out a way to pay tuition. And And the way that I did that is I took a full-time job. I had to drive about an hour each way while I was in school full-time, making over 200 cold calls a day and selling educational data to K through 12 vendors, something I'd never done before, but also just learned how to pick up the phone and have no fear and learn how to communicate over the telephone. And I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning, go work out. I would go drive to Sweet Springs, Missouri, to a company there. I'd make my phone calls. I'd leave at 5, get back at 6, go to school till 9, and repeat that process. And I lost over 100 pounds during that time. And, we don't have to dive into this too much either. But I also, when I graduated, I lost my father to his battle with drugs and alcohol. Oh, man. And so, it was just this big period of time in my life where I had to kind of, reinvent myself, so to speak. I was no longer an athlete. I lost my father. I was working. I was going to school, all of these different things. And it was just this crazy period of time that really showed me early on in my life. I know this is the Old Dogs Real Estate Investing podcast, but I was blessed enough to see what truly mattered in life. And to me, it was my faith, my family, and, my fitness, taking care of myself, because I saw my dad died very young. He's barely 60 years old. And, I could see that, life is fickle. And if you make choices that aren't going to inhibit are not going to allow you to be healthy and thriving, that's going to affect you later in your life. And so it was this big, turmoil, but also I see it as an opportunity to set myself on the right trajectory. And I love my father to this day. And he showed me a lot what not to do. But my dad loved life. He loved us kids. He loved his wife. But he also loved substances just a little bit more than those things. So, when all that happened, I kind of redirected my life to personal, professional development, as well my faith. And that was that was about 6 or 7 years ago now. And I think I needed to go through certain aspects of that to kind of allow me to build the foundation that I stand on today.
Oh, that's awesome. Gosh, that's a heartwarming story, I'll tell you. So so sales, you had never had any prior sales experience, and you're out on the road. It's just selling. Wow. I mean, did you learn a lot in that process about sales, or were you reading books on it, trying to be a more effective salesperson?
I absolutely was. I used that. I think Zig Ziglar said that, your best classroom can be your car, especially if you're a salesperson out actually visiting people. Now, I was behind a computer screen on the phone, but I did have an hour drive to my job every single day. And so when I drove there, I would listen to podcasts. And that's why I'm so passionate about podcasts and educating yourself. And back then, 6 or 7 years ago, Entrepreneur on Fire was one that I would listen to.
Oh, yeah.
I forget his name.
John Lee Dumas.
John Lee
Dumas. He's been on our show here. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So he was doing the podcasts back then, as was Lewis Howes with the School of Greatness. And those two podcasts, along with some success audios from Zig Ziglar, John Wooden, Stephen Covey, literally CDs that I covet to this day. That was the classroom that I was in, and that job taught me less about selling and more about the fear, getting over what fear is to you, which to me is false emotions appearing real. I could repel the rejection, and it didn't mean anything to me. I read early on that they're not rejecting you as a person, Logan, so don't take it personally. They're rejecting your offer to do business. And if you can make that offer more attractive, potentially you can get more customers. And so I really focused on my message, and I focused on selling one large product that all of the other salespeople were a little less apt to sell because it was confusing and complex, but it paid out tenfold. So I was actually the number one salesperson only because the volume that I did, but also I took the time to learn that complex product that actually solved the customer's needs instead of just trying to sell them literally Excel files of contact data for K through 12 educators. And so I sold an actual a solution to their problem, and I had some great success there. I love that job because I needed it, but at the same time they also knew whenever I started that I was probably going to be there for 5 or 6 months. But I tell you what, they didn't mind it. So whenever I went to say, hey guys, I'm graduating, I found a new job, they said, well, we're just glad to have you for as long as you stayed. and I said, well, that's awesome. That was really easy to leave that company, but they were very great. And that was instrumental in kind of how I have built my businesses over the years.
And so how did you move into real estate? Why real estate?
Well, I picked up through that book, through that educational process. When my father passed away, he didn't have a dollar to his name, but he worked at the state of Missouri for a long time. And, we didn't think he had any life insurance or anything like that. But, I ended up getting a check in the mail one day that was addressed to me. And I was like, this is interesting. And it was, I think I ended up getting maybe $15,000 or $20,000. And that was more money than I had really seen up to that point in my life. And, I had my Roth IRA, but I was maxing that out every single year. So I said, I got to figure out how to make these dollars work for me. And through that, I found the little purple book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And and that book really allowed me to see that there was more options for people if they wanted to create wealth for themselves. And so, I started reading all the real estate books that I could get my hands on. And, and I bought, when I was with my next job, which was a franchise consultant with Jimmy John's, I was buying real estate in Kansas City as I was traveling around the country. And I had found a really great firm to work with. And when I found that firm, I found my first mentor in real estate. And so he taught me how to identify properties that you could potentially live in for a couple of years, or quote unquote live in, and have a roommate. So they would pay my mortgage and I would be the general contractor. I had a lot of construction experience, so I helped with the general contracting of those properties. But I would buy them, live in them for quote unquote 2 years, and then I would sell them. And on a $120,000 house, I was in it for 135. I was selling them for 190, and that was awesome to me. And so I did that for every couple of years, and I really saw the power of that. But I also saw that, hey, I'm not building wealth, I'm just building income. And so I then started to shift into, okay, well, how do I build a portfolio? And that's when, this is when I was with another sales job, but that's when I had left the startup world, went into what I thought was a more comfortable role. And after 15 months, this company brought on a private equity firm. And one day I came in and they had laid off quite a few of us, and I was one of those. And so I packed up my stuff there. I came home. My beautiful wife said, hey, I know you've had this idea of doing real estate for a while. I was already getting licensed because I knew that I wanted to at least buy and sell my own properties. So I got my license, and she said, hey, I think you can start a sales consulting company, but I think you should also think about figuring out a process how you can help other people buy real estate into Kansas City. And, happenstance, my buddy that I had been buying real estate with for a long time, his head of acquisitions had left, and he had an opening, and he had just landed a big fish client that was about a $50 million fund here in Kansas City. And over the course of 2 years, we really bought those guys over 225 doors, renovated every single one of them, leased them up, managed it. And I watched this whole process of this buy, renovate, rent it out, refinance, and repeat model on a large scale. And I was able to get a lot of transactions under my belt. And when we finished that portfolio out and did a big refinance using CoreVest's, we were number 6 in the nation to do a CoreVest portfolio refinance loan product with these guys. And I sat down with those sponsors and I said, hey, how'd you find all that money? And they said, oh, well, it's called a syndication. And I had never heard of that word before. And so what do? I went back to educating myself, reading every book that I could. I flew around the country meeting with guys like Michael Blanc and the guys from the real estate guys, Russ Gray and the godfather of real estate. And so I started meeting and educating myself, and I decided at that point that I wanted to start doing larger transactions. So I moved my license over to a commercial brokerage. I went out and started hustling to find some properties, and found some good partners, and started raising capital for my own real estate deals here in Kansas City. And that was a little over 13 or 14 months ago. And we've had a really successful first year of putting those projects together. So that's where I'm at now.
God, that's awesome. Okay, so you're a broker, full-time commercial broker, but
Right.
you do you also invest in your own projects?
Yes. So what I found is there's an underserved class of people trying to purchase real estate, and usually that's buyers. So I'm sure your listeners are aware, but a lot of times listing agents and listing brokerages, they do not want to what's called cooperate or co-broker with other people. Meaning, a lot of times buyers are unrepresented. And with this large scale multifamily syndication craze that's out there in education circuit, a lot of these folks that have really strong power bases, what Grant Cardone would call power bases, and they're very wealthy themselves, decide that they want to start buying real estate. Well, they have a lot of money, but they have never really bought any real estate. And that can kind of lead into some really bad scenarios if you're not represented and you don't have experience going through a transaction process. So I have found a niche to help out-of-state clients purchase properties here in Kansas City. So I do represent outside clients. A lot of times when I'm talking with them, Bill, I find out that they want all the benefits of owning real estate, but they actually didn't know how much went into literally owning real estate. And they say, hey, that's too much for me, Logan. But I do still love the benefits of real estate. How can we work together? And I said, well, I'm not sure. And that's when I started reading books like Joe Fairless's syndication book. And I went to the seminar the real estate guys put together. And I came back with this harebrained idea to say, hey, guys, I understand how to put these together now. And I have an operational team. Did I? No, not yet. But I was going to figure that out. And I do now. And so a lot of those buyer clients turned into passive investors. And, there's a lot of nice carryover. A lot of my passive investors, after they invest in a deal, they see the transaction process. They go through the due diligence. They underwrite it. They're there for inspections if they want to be. They then feel comfortable 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road to actually go purchase real estate themselves. And so I've got this nice little back and forth between people who want to learn the process or people that might be a little more sophisticated and they want to buy real estate themselves.
That's great. That's great. Now, who are your sponsors on some of these deals? I mean, are they people that you've met from out of state, or are they local, or is it you?
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, the brokerage that I work with, my broker at Clemens Real Estate, they've been investing in real estate for 17 years. So we co-sponsor projects together. I have done a few myself on the sponsor side, and I'm very keen of what my strengths are and where I'm best utilized in a transaction. And I found out this year it's not necessarily going out bird dogging deals and figuring out if it's a good acquisition, how to structure it. So I paired up with a group here in Kansas City, some local guys who own over 4,500 units, and we've co-sponsored a few projects as well. And so I try to find people, and it's all locally here. So most of our projects that we complete are in the Kansas City metro area, or at least in the Midwest. We're operators at heart, so that's kind of our secret sauce is, hey, we can manage it, we're going to invest in it, and we know the market better than anybody else. So that's a really important piece of the puzzle for us. So I have some projects that I co-sponsor with Clemens, and some that I co-sponsor with another group here in Kansas City, and it has kept me very busy.
That's great. What percentage would you say is out of state that you are involved in?
The only projects that we have that are out of state right now is a a self-storage facility in Lansing, Michigan. And I've been up there a couple times to view it. The only reason we're doing a project in Lansing is it was an off-market opportunity that one of my co-sponsors, his father lives there. And so he was able to get a lead on this project, and it's actually in an opportunity zone. So that's kind of one of the verticals that we focus on, is being the leading authority, at least in Kansas City, on opportunity zones. A lot of the legislature is coming from Polsinelli, who are our attorneys on these projects. And so we have tried to get ahead of and understand opportunity zones. And I don't know if the listeners are aware of opportunity zones, but a lot of people think you have to do ground up development. In the second tranche of regulations that came out, they mentioned that if it's original use provision, meaning the property has not been depreciated and no income has been generated on the property, it can still qualify. So we have targeted projects that have TCO, which is a temporary certificate of occupancy, at closing. So we eliminate all development and construction risk, but we still get all the benefits of being an opportunity zone. And so that is the only project at this time that is either not in Kansas or Missouri. It's in Michigan. And we are heavily looking into Oklahoma right now as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Are you predominantly multifamily? Are you doing, office buildings and commercial retail?
Yep. So we did 2 hotels this year in Kansas City. These are boutique bed and breakfast hotels. So I don't know a lot of people doing that type of asset class, but we have experience in managing hotels. So those worked out well for us. We've done 2 multifamily projects this year, and we have that self-storage facility that we're going to be closing by the end of the year. We did an office park here in Kansas City, as well as straight up commercial. So we're very involved in pushing what Victor Menashe calls buying the line and moving the line. And it's a very delicate process when you're buying on the line and trying to still keep the community very involved with what you're doing. And so we are redeveloping a whole corridor on what historically has been the dividing line in Kansas City, which is called Troost. And so we're heavily involved in commercial real estate, just having retail tenants as well. So a little bit of everything. I would say that our bread and butter and where we try to stay is multifamily. However, that has been more and more competitive this year.
That's great. That's great. You like the person that, you have certain projects you're connected to, and when people want to buy. Now you're saying you're representing primarily the buyer. Is your name listed on certain projects? So if somebody, maybe looks in LoopNet or wherever they may look to find out about this project, would they find your name listed and they could contact you?
They will not find my name on any listings. I have 2 or 3 agents that I work directly with at Clemens that focus on any listing leads that I get. I pass them along. It's just not my circle of genius, what I'll call. I have enough good buyers and have been able to figure out how to fulfill those transactions. And so I pass off all of my listings to other people in the office. If they go to my website, they would be able to see all of our past projects. So our website lists all of the past projects, from buyer clients all the way to our joint ventures and our equity partnerships.
Are you doing any development, or did you do any development this year?
I will say that we have done quite a bit of redevelopment. So I bought a 12,000 square foot vacant building, and we are redeveloping it. I don't do a ton of ground up development, only because that's just not what we have historically been focused on. It has been more buying old buildings and redeveloping them, but they might be vacant. And sometimes I have found in my own experience that buying a 100-year-old building, it feels like it might be easier to just rebuild something from scratch. But we have not done any ground up development, something we've evaluated but have decided not to focus on at this time.
Got it. Let's say, for example, someone is Southern California, or they're another state, and they're looking at property in Kansas City. If they contact you and say, "Hey, I'd like to find out, Logan, can you kind of give me an idea of some, 100+ unit properties there? What would be the process you would have with that person?
The first thing that we would do is I try to get to understand somebody's experience level first, and I have an acronym that I walk a lot of people through. And I stole this from somebody. I don't remember who it was, but real estate is, I always look for the ideal investment. And the I stands for income, the D, depreciation, E, equity buildup, A, appreciation, and L, leverage on your dollars and on your time. And so I start there and I work with them on, hey, out of those 5 things, what is most important to you? And so that's kind of the focus that we start at. I never start with a listing or with a property. I try to get to understand what they're trying to accomplish with real estate. Maybe it's taxes. Maybe we need to start working on becoming a real estate professional. Hey, how can we do that? Do you have CPAs that I can talk with? Absolutely. So I try to understand what's most important to them, what's their goal. And after that, then we start looking at certain asset classes. And I also try to educate people on multifamily is not the only thing out there. And in my opinion, some commercial retail properties are the only things that are priced correctly right now. So we have closed recently on quite a few triple net lease investment opportunities for clients. So then we start on asset classes, and then we have a pretty vigorous underwriting process that we go through. Because if I don't understand how somebody else is looking at the numbers and how they're going to underwrite, I'm never going to be able to find a property that fits their criteria. So we take past projects that have been completed, we work through the appraisals, and we work through the underwriting of those projects. And then we look at the financing that was put on those, how the banks looked at the financing. And it's a pretty intense process, but I only work with 3 or 4 people at a time doing this because it takes a lot of my time as well. After that underwriting process is set in, I then introduce them to different local lenders so they can talk about kind of the different financing programs that are available here in Kansas City. They talk with property management companies, and they also talk to real estate attorneys. And so I have this whole team of people that I invest with myself and I utilize for my own investing, that I open up my network to these folks, and it's a whole process that they go through. By the time that they get through that process, Bill, they feel like they've got a team built in to Kansas City, and when an actual deal does come across my desk and I can send it to them, we're able to move, and we're not trying to figure out all those other processes or pieces to the process. At that time, we're able to confidently move and execute on a transaction.
That's impressive. So when you're underwriting, are you, let's say there's a potential property, you'll dig into it with your guys on the numbers so that you make sure that matches what the investor is looking for?
Exactly. Take it one step farther. I typically start with a project that we have already completed. And so it might be a 50-unit apartment complex. It might be a commercial triple net lease project. Since I already have an appraisal and I already have done the financing and we've already done the underwriting for those, I typically use those as examples. And once I understand what they're looking for from a return criteria, I can then start to hone in on the right type of asset class and property that actually might fit what we have agreed to. That would be a good candidate for them to purchase.
Right. That's great. There's it's great because I don't even know if I've had a commercial broker on this show out of 350 some odd episodes.
Wow.
Yeah. It's so this is I'm just going to ask you a few little sort of commercial, broker type questions.
Please.
And we focus a lot on finding an emerging market, one that is really has all the right stuff, the population growth, the business growth, so many different aspects that make it an area where it's just a good investment area. And in that process, they may start off with, census numbers and narrow it down to maybe 3 cities or 3 regions in the U.S. And then sort of the next step for a lot of investors is, okay, now I need to find somebody in that area that really knows the area. And it usually starts with brokers. But, a lot of times, you'll call a broker cold, and that broker, is like, who are you? And what, are you, what do you want, kind of type thing. And maybe you could kind of give some advice for those folks that, they're trying to basically establish they don't really have anything in mind yet, but they're trying to get a feel for the area, maybe get somebody who can, maybe help them find a project. What advice would you have to sort of connect with a broker, and so that you could be sort of the foundation of establishing a long-term relationship?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And I think that the first thing that people should do is probably get on CoStar or LoopNet and actually start contacting these brokers, getting the marketing materials, the T12s, the different financial documents that they might have, putting them through their own underwriting analysis, and then sending feedback. I've had a few clients, because I've had listings, and I have had a few clients that have turned into really great relationships, that have spent the time looking at one of our listings at Clemens and underwriting it themselves, and then actually recording their screen, going through the assumptions that they are making, cross-referencing them to the T12. This is, by the way, like a 3-minute video of them doing this, and then talking to why it does or doesn't work and the questions that they have. If somebody takes the time that it takes to do that, and can talk confidently and communicate clearly about what they're looking for and how they would think about a process like that, that's somebody that I'm going to call back and spend time with, trying to develop a relationship with. And so I think the best way to do that is probably to get on the, to LoopNet and see who has the listings. And, I would ask a question too. Do you typically work with buyers? And that's an important question to ask. And if they say, no, there's probably somebody in the city that does, but there's a lot of listing agents that aren't going to turn you away if you ask for that, especially if you have created some value by taking the time and evaluating the property, making a quick video, or at least just catching them on the phone and talking them through that. And that has been really a great way to catch a broker's what I call attention. That would be the first thing that I would say that people can do. The second thing, I think that what people can do is get on these mailing lists, and when these blasts go out of a new listing or a project that somebody has, typically they don't get a lot of response from that. But again, taking the time and evaluating the offering memorandum, and then just asking 3 or 4 questions just in a nice bulleted format so they can respond to it very quickly, and seeing who responds to you. If a broker wants to work with a buyer, or they feel like you're a good quality candidate, they will respond. And if they don't, then you move on to the next one. But most of the leading brokers, it's similar to the 20-80 rule or the 80-20 rule, Pareto's principle. 20% of the listings in the projects or 80% of the listings and projects that are being done in Kansas City are by 20% of the brokers. And I think that probably would be true to a lot of different markets. So just finding that 1 or 2 people that you could feel comfortable with working with and adding value to. And it takes a little bit of time to develop that relationship, but and it takes time on your end as a buyer as well to do that. Those 2 things starting off is really important. And then, I typically, before I work with anybody and take anybody really seriously, I insist that they actually come to Kansas City. And I'm not a big one to make offers on properties for people that have not been to the city. If they've been to the city and just haven't been to this specific property, then that's one thing. But if they haven't even been to Kansas City and they're making offers on properties, I'm a little less apt to think that they're probably a qualified buyer, other than the fact that if you can't grab a plane ticket to go to a market that you're looking to invest in, you probably shouldn't be trying to invest in real estate as well. Now, I have had some exceptions to that, Bill. I have a few clients that don't fly, and they said, Logan, I'm not going to drive to Kansas City, Missouri, but they do have an awesome resume and an awesome track record sheet that they share with me. And again, if they've taken the time to aggregate those past projects, put 3 or 4 bullets together, what they did, what they bought it at, how they completed the process, that feels good to me as a buyer's agent. And I can tell that somebody has spent that time up front to really be invested in the process with me.
That's great. That is the most unique, creative thing I've heard of somebody actually going in, underwriting it, and capturing the the video of that. I mean, that is really a great idea. I've never heard that before. Very creative. Wow. Well, let me ask you another quick one here, and then this is about every sort of new investor's dream is to develop a relationship with a broker where you're going to get offered pocket listings. Okay, so maybe you could kind of give us just your rough idea on the whole idea of pocket listings and whether or not that's something that's even occurring right now.
Yeah. I would say that pocket listings are becoming few and far between. And here's the reason. If you own a 100+ unit apartment complex, typically you are somewhat of a sophisticated person. Now, and when I say sophisticated person, I mean a sophisticated real estate person. There's a lot of people that have inherited properties that are sophisticated, or they're competent, but they might not have a lot of experience in real estate. That being said, if you have a 100+ unit multifamily project or any type of property above $1 million, you understand that right now in a lot of different markets, we are close to being or are at the top of what a lot of economists and real estate guys would say of the cycle. And so why wouldn't you take that to a broker, to try to solicit the best project or the best price for your project? With that being said, there are still opportunities that sellers are in a little bit of a time crunch, or there might be what I call a little bit of hair on the project that needs to be shaved. And if you can get your head wrapped around that, then we still have a lot of the quote unquote pocket listings, because to the point that sophisticated sellers do take properties to brokers, the same point that if you know somebody that is so ingrained with every property owner and every broker in the city, that person is going to have properties that are never going to be listed and are that probably will never be taken to market for other various reasons. Case in point, I'm working on a 200+ unit multifamily project, $29 million on the acquisition price, and it's going to be an off-market opportunity for one of my buyers, only because I'm out there every single day or every other day. I'd slowed down a little bit since I've had my sweet baby girl, but I try to spend more time with my family now than I did before that. But every other day out there networking, trying to feel what the pulse is, who's moving what's going on with this company, and putting all those pieces together are just things that people that don't live in the city are not going to have. So having a relationship with somebody that has their finger on the pulse of the market, you're going to still get opportunities that other people wouldn't have been able to get to. I wouldn't say that they're still called necessarily pocket listings. It's just you might have 2 weeks lead time before it gets listed. You might find out that the seller owns other properties that aren't necessarily being thought about being sold right now, but maybe you could make an offer on them. Things like that happen quite a bit.
Now, how do you decide which of your seller contacts that you share that offering with?
From my standpoint, the buyer contacts that I work with, I really typically only work with 3 to 4 people at a time, and each one is typically looking for something different. And so for me, I have a pretty good success rate once I bring a client on, and I focus, and I used to shotgun a lot. Now I rifle in with those people, and everyone, if you remember the process that I talked about that I take people through, everyone is at a different part of that process. And so every one of those 3 to 4 people are at a different part of that process. And so not everybody is ready to purchase when that opportunity comes. So really, at any given time, I have one really strong buyer and maybe 2 to 3 that are working through the process to getting ready to purchase something, but might not be there yet.
Got it. Well, our audience is, as you know, they're folks that are 50 years of age and older. Some are, still working and they're approaching retirement. Some are in retirement. But the common concern is, am I going to have enough for my retirement? People are living longer. There's all kinds of expenses that a lot of retirees don't expect, everything from assisted living to medical bills and so forth. And so they're really looking at real estate as a means to be able to sort of bridge that gap, not only in terms of cash flow, but also for the long run, maybe even creating a legacy that they can hand down to their families. What advice would you have for those folks?
I think that's a very unique question. One that I have not really thought about much, but I've been having a lot of conversations around different. After we did our last equity raise, multiple of our investors utilized some sort of self-directed retirement account. And, I think that that's an interesting thing for somebody that might be a little later in life, only because you're going to be able to utilize that early. I mean, not earlier, but in the near future. For a guy like me, I'm not going to be able to touch that for quite some time, which is okay. But I would think that maybe trying to unlock some capital that they may not have thought of that was available to invest in real estate. And I'm almost 100% sure you've had a few folks on talking about that or have gone through that process. That was a big eye opener for me. This last capital raise that we did. I had 3 or 4 investors invest out of their self-directed IRAs. And so maybe thinking about opportunities that they could unlock potential capital that they didn't have or didn't think that they had. So just learning about that process would be a nice tip for your audience.
That's great. Now you've got a nice, fairly new business that you're building up and you're broadening out. And what's sort of the thing that really excites you about your business and where you want to take it?
Well, I would say that actually building a business, Bill, is what I'm trying to do. And, in the commercial real estate space, typically, you're tied to your time. And I have a business coach and mentor that has 5 commandments of business. And one of those is being able to step away from your job or your business and it still create income for you. And so obviously I'm doing that on the investing side, but I've been working towards building a system and a process out that allows people to engage with me and go through that process that I described earlier on the show, but go through that process with an automated Logan and not physically me being on every single phone call. So we tracked this in every buyer client that comes through. I spend about 15 hours with before we get to making an offer on something. And so that obviously limits my potential to work with more people or at a more streamlined way of working with people. And so we are building out what we are calling a buyer's journey and an investor's journey right now, utilizing email, utilizing video, utilizing digital marketing and social media that I'm really excited about, that I think will really help scale my potential up on the actual acquisition side and the capital raising side of things.
Great idea. That's awesome. Well, our time is zipping by, and I want to respect your time as well here. I know that you've got a call after this, and we're coming up to what we call our wrap it up session. And
All right.
in this, I ask you a series of quick questions, and you give me quick replies, and it's a way of sharing resources that have been valuable to you with our listeners, and they really value a lot of the things that are said during this time. So if you are ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
I am ready.
All right. Favorite real estate book?
I'm going to say Raising Private Capital by Richard C. Wilson.
Great one. How about favorite business book?
The Millionaire's Fastlane by MJ DeMarco.
Most valuable website for success? And that's a be other than your own, obviously.
I'm going to say Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, I did that one.
That's a great one.
Yeah. How about favorite app?
I use an app called G-Tasks to make sure that I don't forget anything. And I'm not that old, but I am very forgetful. And so with all the different things that I have going on, G-Tasks allows me to create different lists, one for my personal life, one for my business life, one for marketing, and create tasks that are not only reoccurring, but things that I can check to see that are overdue, when they need to happen, all of those things. And it ties to my Gmail calendar as well, which is incredible.
Oh, nice. I got to check that out.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
How about favorite quote?
Ambition is the path to success, but persistence is the vehicle we arrive at.
That's you know who said that?
Bill Bradley, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, wow. I like it. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, and this one's our clincher here. If you lost absolutely everything, I mean, all the assets that you have, the money in the bank, and all you have is just $1,000 in cash in your hand, what would you do with that $1,000 to relaunch your real estate investing business?
I would use it to get a brand authority online, and then I would start calling on podcast hosts like yourself to get my message out. And so whatever those dollars took to get a website up and to get in contact with individuals like yourself, that's exactly what I would do.
Great idea.
Yeah,
right.
It's wonderful.
Oh man, that's good. This is good stuff here, man. This has been absolutely awesome, and I'm sure there's folks that are listening that would love to find out more about you. And speaking of that website, your website, any contact information that you could provide, it'd be great for our listeners.
Absolutely, I can be reached directly at livefreeinvestments.com, and it's spelled just how it sounds: livefreeinvestments.com. My cell phone number is actually on that website, and people call me crazy, but guess what? I don't have to answer all the time. So leave me a message and I will call you back.
That's great. Well, we have come to that point here that all of our guests look forward to, and that is all of our guests get to close out the show with their best old hound dog howl. And I know that Kansas City's got a lot of dogs around, right?
You bet. You bet.
Got to have some hound dogs, hunting dogs down there. Well, if you are ready, let's go ahead and just give us your best old hound dog howl.
Ow!
All right. Great.
How fun is that?
Well, Logan, this has been a blast having you on. Man, some great information. What a great story. Just your life and how you turned things around, and it just really just created such success here. So hopefully we'll have a few folks that are looking at Kansas City. I know a lot of people in SoCal are that might want to connect with you, or maybe even come out there and check things out.
Wonderful. Well, it's been great to be on here, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you, Bill.
Well, same here. And I just want to thank all our old dog listeners out there for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we greatly appreciate it. Please note everything we presented here today that Logan spoke about, including the links to some of these great resources he mentioned, can be accessed in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And you're going to look for the episode with Logan Morgan. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward, and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.